Hey, what's up, guys? Alright, so we got another chapter of Black Clover out this week, and this is actually the first chapter post the half year time skip. And to celebrate that, Tabata actually gave us a color cover page of Asta, Nero, Mimosa, and Noel, and their designs of what they're going to look like post the time skip. And for the most part, they don't look that different, and it's not surprising that they wouldn't, because of the fact that it's only been half a year. The characters aren't going to change that much during the time skip. I think the biggest change was the fact that Asta, he looks like he might be a little bit taller, a little bit more buff, and he has a scar on his stomach, and he's also going shirtless now. But when it comes to the other characters, Mimosa and Noel, it looks like maybe their hair might have got a little bit longer, but they're also still rocking the same hairstyles that they had before the time skip. And when it comes to Nero, I don't really see any changes whatsoever to her character design. Now, it could be something that I'm not seeing off of first glance that you guys might have picked up on that I didn't, but as far as I can tell, her character is pretty much designed the same way as it did before the time skip. Now, interestingly enough, we don't actually get to see Finn Rawl on his cover page, which is actually very surprising because of the fact that he's actually the fifth member of this group that originally went into the Heart Kingdom and were invited to train with their elite soldiers. So it makes me wonder why he's not on there, and I think it's because of the fact that Tabata actually might be planning to change his design the most out of everyone during this half-year time skip. And this actually makes a lot of sense because if you remember back to after the Witch Force arc, Finn Rawl actually had some character development where instead of being a coward who would run away from fights, he decided to actually face fights head on with his friends. When we next saw him after that arc in the Royal Knight Selection exam, he had changed his look. It was really only he got a haircut and basically dyed his hair a little bit, but he did change his design a little bit. And despite the fact that most of the Black Bulls actually gained some kind of newfound power during the time between the Witch Force arc and the Royal Knight Selection exam, Tabata only chose to change Finn Raw's character design. It would make a lot of sense that he would do the same thing again during his half-year training, where even though during a half-year most people aren't going to look that much different, he would decide to give Finn Rawl a big change in his design. And it could be that the reason why he didn't actually put Finn Rawl on his cover is because he doesn't actually have the design fully fleshed out just yet. But I can pretty much guarantee you that next time we see Finn Rawl post his half-year time skip, we will have seen him with a brand new design. And you know what? Speaking of Finn Rawl, he's actually the character I'm most interested in seeing post the time skip. Because unlike other characters like Noel and Mimosa, when it comes to Noel, obviously she gained a whole bunch of new attack spells, maybe some defensive spells as well. With Mimosa, some new attack spells and possibly some healing magic and support magic as well. But when it comes to Finn Rawl, I don't know which way Tabata is planning on taking them. Because it could be that Finn Rawl is going to actually gain some new attack spells of his own when it comes to spatial magic. Or it could be that Tabata planned on just continuing with him being a support mage and it's found new interesting ways for his support or his spatial magic to be used in support. Kind of like how we saw a few chapters ago when we found out that you can use the spatial magic to basically have people fly through the air. The Tabata could come up with brand new interesting ways for him to basically do things to support others when they're fighting after this whole half-year time skip. But at the same time, he also did kind of set up that Finn Rawl was planning on becoming more powerful in himself, so it would make a lot of sense that he actually would gain some kind of attack spells. Although I do gotta say, I would personally love to see Finn Rawl finally break free from his support mage status and gain some attack spells, kind of like how Langers has. So the chapter starts off in a Grand Magic Zone in between the Heart Kingdom and the Space Kingdom, and if you're paying attention, this is actually the fifth Grand Magic Zone we've been introduced to in the series. The first one was the Undersea Temple, the second one was the Witch's Forest, the third one was Ultimate Volcano, and the fourth one was Gravitino Rock, which was actually the base of the Midnight Sun's Eye. But anyway, like I was saying, the chapter actually starts off in the Grand Magic Zone in between the Heart Kingdom and the Spade Kingdom, in which we get to see some soldiers from the Spade Kingdom traveling through the Grand Magic Zone in this giant device that I think they call the Candero in this chapter. But the reason why they're traveling through this Grand Magic Zone in a device is because of the fact that the Grand Magic Zone they're in is very disastrous. It's very unsafe for people to actually travel through on foot or even by broom. It's because of the fact that the weather is very disastrous and it's a very chaotic place to just walk through. So they actually had to use this device to actually safely travel through it. Now we end up finding out that the Candero actually runs off of mana. And basically, the way we find out that they're running the Candero or actually continuously running it and fueling it with mana, well, have you guys ever seen that movie Snowpiercer with Chris Evans? Where we end up finding out that most of or all of humanity lives on a train. Well, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, but basically by the end, we end up finding out that in order to keep the train constantly moving, we end up finding out that the person in charge of the train sacrifices children in order to keep the train functioning. And that's pretty much what the Kandero does in the chapter. We end up finding out that the way they keep the Kandero constantly fueled with mana is by sacrificing low-tier civilians that assumably they kidnapped from the Spade Kingdom, possibly also from the Diamond Kingdom, because we end up finding out later on that they actually did invade and actually conquer most of the Diamond Kingdom in their invasion. But yeah, we find out that they basically put them in this giant tube. It drains them of their mana all the way to death, because we also find out that even your life force has a little bit of mana in it. And then after the people who are currently inside the tube die, they get the next batch to drag the bodies out, and the corpses look like these dried husks by the time they're draining their mana. They drag the bodies out, and then they're forced in themselves. And we get this really heartbreaking scene where we see this big sister actually pleading for the life of her little sister, because just like how Asta was born without any magic, the little sister was born with such little mana in her that if she were to go inside the tube that drains the mana from them, she wouldn't last more than a few seconds, and then she would die. And she's begging the soldiers to basically spare her little sister, even if she has to go in herself in her place. And as if there wasn't any more reason to hate these soldiers, these fodder characters that we get introduced to from the Spade Kingdom, we see them basically yelling at this little girl, or yelling at the girl who's begging for her sister's life, uncaring about the fact that they just killed people by putting them inside the tube. And then, to make matters worse, by the end of the chapter, or by the middle point of the chapter, they have ripped off the woman's clothes and basically were planning on raping her. Now, obviously, these Spade Knights don't matter at all, and they're literally just generic fodder characters. They're kind of like the soldiers from Frieza's army in Dragon Ball Z, where we don't get to know most of them. We only get to know a few of their names, but they really don't matter because they're just there to die. And that's pretty much what the Spade Kingdom's soldiers in this chapter are here for. They're literally just here for later on in the chapter when a certain character shows up to be killed off or to be defeated in a badass moment, just to show how much stronger they become during the half-year training. Now, while the Kandero is actually traveling through the Grand Magic Zone, we actually get to check in with the princess, and we see that the Kandero actually got close enough to the Heart Kingdom that from inside of it, she can actually, or from this border, she can actually see them coming. And we get to see her and Gacha talking about the whole half-year training that they've done, and just how much stronger they become. And the thing that Gacha mentions the most that actually stuck with me was how surprised he was with how much stronger Asta has become himself in his half-year training. And the reason why he's surprised is because of the fact that he equates the reason why him and other, members of the elite soldiers in the Heart Kingdom, and Mimosa and Noelle and them, were able to gain such strength is because they are loved by mana. But since Asta has no mana inside of him, it seems like Gacha probably didn't expect Asta to actually gain that much strength during the training, but it seems like he became exceedingly more powerful than he was before the time skip. And of course, the princess basically just equates that to being, hey, he's in the dark tier. We can't really quantify exactly how much stronger he can become just because of the fact that he doesn't have any mana. We don't know the extent of his abilities just yet. He's still even learning them himself. And basically to highlight the fact that Asta has become so much more powerful, we see him basically once Kandero gets close to the Heart Kingdom, he comes flying out of the Heart Kingdom to the Kandero. And keep in mind, everything Asta does is in this chapter is outside of his dark form. It's just him in his base form. He comes flying outside the Kandero, flying on his Demon Slayer sword like it's a fucking surfboard, crashes through the Kandero, and gets there fine without any damage to him whatsoever. And keep in mind, he flew through the Grand Magic Zone to get to them, which means he went through the dangerous weather that was deemed too dangerous to travel through by the Spade Knights. This is a moment where I'm sure everyone lost their shit, because we get this moment, this very, very, very epic moment, once Asta actually gets inside the Kandero and starts talking to the Spade Knights, and they're basically hassling him about the fact that he's a lone soldier from the Clover Kingdom who's basically just came in there to die. He shuts them up in this very epic moment by calling back his Demon Slayer sword, which, by the way, when he came crashing into the Kandero, he fell off of it, and the sword went straight inside. I think it got stuck inside the wall of the tube where they were using to sacrifice people and drain their mana. It gets stuck in there, and he calls the sword back like it's fucking Thor's hammer, and it comes flying back to his hand. And then, of course, once Asta actually summons the sword back to him, he proceeds to beat the shit out of not even really beat the shit. He lands one slash on the guy who was about to attack him. It destroys the admittedly kind of cool looking armor that the guy was in, and sends the guy flying outside the Kandero. Now, I want you guys to pay attention to this part of the chapter, because if you notice, and I've actually missed this on my first viewing of it, but if you notice, during this attack, Asta's Demon Slayer sword is actually coated on the outside rim of it in anti-magic. Now, it's not the same kind of like coating as it was during the last arc when we saw him gain his new black form, but we see that there is a layer of it around it, so it seems like he now has more finite control over his anti-magic and how he disperses it through his swords. Now, I actually really like this idea of this technique because of the fact that it is very similar, like I said, to the one he used in the previous arc when he was fighting off against the demon, but seemingly by basically just coating the outside layer of the sword with a very thin layer of anti-magic, that would be a lot less taxing on his body than would he coat the entire thing like he did in the previous arc. So because of the fact that he developed a new way to finally tune that technique means that he's actually gained so much more control over his anti-magic that he did in the previous previously. Now, we don't get to see any other new techniques that Asami developed within this half-year training, but just seeing this one has me extremely excited to see exactly what his other swords can do. Like, can his other swords use the same technique, or do they have their own unique techniques for each sword? Did he possibly gain a new sword? Did he gain full control over his black form now, so now he can actually use it for longer periods of time and not be limited to basically only 2 times a day without someone healing him and basically helping him to recover his energy? It's exciting to see exactly how much Asta has developed over this year training, or this half-year training. And this is just a start. We have so many more characters to see exactly how much stronger they become, especially Yuno, Noelle, and Finral. Now that we've been introduced to exactly how much of a badass Asta has become in just his base form, I'm interested in seeing exactly how much those 3 characters have developed as well. And you know what, speaking of Yuno, we actually cut over at the end of chapter 2 Hage Village, and we see Sister Lily coming outside of the orphanage, and basically what we see as soon as she opens the door is that there's a guy passed out in front of the village, or passed out in front of the orphanage, and he looks very beat up, he looks very tattered, and the only thing he managed to mutter before the chapter ends is Master Yuno. Now, this is a very interesting cliffhanger to leave off on because of the fact that we have no indication of what this could mean, because we don't have any idea who this guy is. I tried to look at his face, I looked at it for a long time and tried to figure out maybe he's this character, maybe he's that character, but we have never been introduced to this character whatsoever. In fact, even in the editor's notes at the end of the chapter, they mention we have no idea who this guy is and his connection to Yuno. And that's what's most interesting about it, because we, in this half-year time that we've gotten from this time skip, we don't know exactly what could have happened to Yuno during that time period. For all we know, he could have ended up becoming the captain of the Golden Dawn, which technically really isn't that impossible because of the fact that Vengeance would have been kicked out of his position as captain after what he did in the previous arc. So the position's open, and with how quickly Yuno has gained power and has risen up in the ranks, it wouldn't be that surprising that in half a year's time he could have developed into being the captain of the Golden Dawn. It's not really realistic, but at the same time, it's also a possibility. But I'm also reminded of the fact that a lot of fans have the theory that maybe Yuno is actually of royalty. And even though it wouldn't make a lot of sense, I've always kind of debunked that theory because of the fact that Yuno has gained a lot of popularity and a lot of notoriety ever since he's joined the Magic Knights. So he's become too much of a celebrity for anyone of the royal family not to have claimed him at this point if he actually was a member of their family. But there is a possibility now that maybe Yuno actually might be a member of the royal family from a different country. And if he is, that could explain why this guy actually looks very tattered and very beat up, because maybe he was on a very long journey to get to Yuno, and that's the reason why he came to Hage Village, because the last place they actually knew of dropping off Yuno when he was kicked out or brought away from his royal family was when they sent him to Hage Village. So if this guy actually is from a different country and Yuno actually is royalty from that different country, it would make a lot of sense. You know, the theory actually might be very viable now. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much where the chapter ends. I'm very interested in seeing exactly what the connection between this guy that we meet at the end of the chapter and Yuno is. And like I've been saying throughout the entire video, I'm really interested in seeing exactly how much stronger Finral, Noelle, Asta, and Yuno have become over this half-year training. And that's not to say that I'm not interested in seeing exactly how much stronger the rest of the characters have become, but they're the 4 that actually take the spotlight for me. But pretty much that's it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.